Okay. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Aaron Styles.
Hi, I'm Karen Burke.
Hi, I'm Karen Atila. And recording. Sergeant Gronk, how you doing? Okay. You're set, ma'am.
I remember growing up watching I Love Lucy, and I remember watching this episode where Lucy is standing, and she's in Italy, and she's standing in this big tub of grapes, stomping them to make wine. And I just remember thinking that was the coolest thing ever. I wanted to stand in a tub and crush grapes with my feet to make wine. And also, since my mother, when I was 2 days before my 7th grade school year, she let me taste my first sip of wine, which was Ernest Gallio's Merlot from a gallon jug. I've had this fascination with wine. My fascination is actually carried over into being one of my hobbies, which is collecting corks. I have a collection of over 1,500 corks that I've taken from bottles of wine that I've drank since around 2005 when I was stationed at Holloman. There's just something about wine, the way it smells, the way it tastes, how it tastes different with different foods that you eat, that I just love. And so that fascination actually brought me to my topic today, which is going to be the history of wine and the making of wine. I'm going to start off today talking to you a little bit about the history of wine and some folk tales about how wine was founded and where it showed up in the Bible first. And then I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about the actual making of wine, going from the fermentation process to the aging as well as to the bottling. Wine actually shows up about 6,000 BC in the Mesopotamian era. Since I don't have enough time to actually go back that far, I would actually just like to touch over a few spots in history and throughout the world where wine was actually brought up. Like I stated before, wine was brought up in the Bible. Noah is credited with planting the first vineyards after the flood. And what actually happened was he's the first person in the Bible to actually show up drunk in the Bible. Even though this is the case, the Bible actually, in the Old Testament, it actually mentions vineyards as being a valuable possession. Another story, and according to winepros.org, is there's an ancient Persian fable about a lady of the court. The king's daughter had lost favor with her father, and she had decided that she was going to kill herself. And what she had decided to do was eat a tub full of spoiled grapes. Well, instead of actually committing suicide, she ended up getting drunk. Got a little giddy, felt good, and ended up passing out. So the next morning, whenever she woke up, she actually felt pretty good. Other than a little hangover, she felt good. The stresses of her life had kind of disappeared, and she was able to kind of enjoy this new point of life, and what she decided to, a new take on life. And what she decided to do was go back to the source that had made her feel so good, these spoiled grapes. And she just continued to be eating spoiled grapes. And the king actually noticed of her change in behavior, stating that, she had this new lease on life, and that, he didn't understand what it was, and she had told him what it was. He tried them, enjoyed them, and actually made a decree for the production of spoiled grapes. In about 4000 BC, the Egyptians were actually credited with making wine as well. Not only did the first record of the harvest take place with the Egyptians, but they actually kept the detailed information on tablets and stones on their walls and on their tombs. They also recorded the first, they were actually credited for being the first ones to put the winemakers on the bottles, creating the first wine label. In ancient Greece, wine was praised and immortalized by the poets, historians, and artists. The Greeks actually perfected the pot to use to store the wine, allowing for an airtight seal. The Romans are credited with bringing wine to Europe, and I thank them for this. Before then, wine was primarily for the royalty, privileged, and the more well-to-do families. But the more wine was brought over to Europe, the more it started reaching the common citizen, and became so popular that pretty soon there were wine bars on every corner, which is the town I'd like to live in. According to artmakers.com, during the 19th century, when the British were fighting in the wars, they were unable to get a steady supply of wine, which of course we know would be completely unacceptable. So what they ended up doing was, and since they couldn't get it from France, they turned to Spain to get port instead, which if you haven't tried it is another great type of wine. So pretty soon in the 19th century, port became the most valued possession, or the most valued preferred wine. Throughout the 19th century and well into the 20th century, the wine has progressed greatly with the production. One of the things that has been one of the most valuable creations was the invention of the refrigeration. What refrigeration allowed us to do was to actually bring wine to more warmer locations. It allowed the vineyards to actually produce better qualities of wine, allow the fermentation process to age a little bit better, and they were able to get wine out to more culture or more areas. Now that we understand a little bit about the history of wine, let's look at how the wine process is actually made. The grape is one of the only fruits that has a tendency to ferment based on its ample juices and concentrated sugars. One species of grape, the Vitis vinifera, is used in nearly all wines around the world. From this species, as many as 4,000 varieties of grape have been developed. More information on this can be found at ushoneycreek.com, which is from a vineyard in Missouri that is a mass producer of wine. All wines are made in similar ways, with variations depending on the types being produced. This includes harvesting, crushing, juice separation, treatment of the massed crushed grapes, and juice, called the must. Fermentation, post-fermentation, clarification, aging, and bottling. The harvest dates of wine depend largely on the location and weather. August, September, and October are the primary dates in most Europe and North America for harvesting. Many festivals actually follow this tradition. They hold many festivals because of this. Grapes are actually harvested based on the types of wine desired. For example, if you want a sparkling wine such as Chardonnay or Pinot Noir, your grapes are going to be harvested first because it's going to allow for lower sugar and acid levels. After the harvesting, the grapes are crushed. This is where you actually get a steam in the vat, stomp the grapes. However, for health reasons, this process is actually, they've stopped doing it in a lot of vineyards because obviously you don't want people's stinky feet in your wine. So what they've done to offset this is they've created machines that imitate that stomping to make sure the grapes are effectively crushed. The juice, the must, is made up of about 80% juice, 16% skins, and 4% tannins, which is the aging and the aging contaminants that they put into the wine. Fermentation is what happens next after the crushing. This is where the action actually happens. This is where they put the process to go from the vine onto my table for a bottle of wine for me to drink. During this process, the grapes' sugars they're converted into alcohol and carbon dioxide. This process usually takes up to about 30 days, during which the temperature is controlled and to promote yeast growth and extract some flavors from the skins. Once the wine is fermented, the racking process begins, and this is where they get all of the extra crap out of the wine so you're not drinking seeds or skins. After this, the wine is moved into big containers, normally oak or redwood, but lately, if you're mass-producing wine, they put it in steel, and it sits there for the aging process. The oak wood actually contributes to the flavor as well. Some vineyards actually choose to age it in the containers, or they bottle it first, and they age it in the bottle for up to 20 years. So now that we understand a little bit about the history, let's go over what we've talked about so far. I started off talking to you about the history of wine, talking about some of these folk tales, how Noah was credited in the Bible for being the first person to be drunk. And then we went in talking about the actual process of making wine, which entails the fermentation process as well as the aging. And some vineyards like to age their wines up to 20 years. I hope that you've enjoyed this briefing, and remember, next time you open up a bottle of wine, there's a little bit more history to it, and just think you could one day, crush it with your teeth. Thank you. Oh my